but I've spent a lot of my time in Virginia and the DC area, so I call that home.
Okay, great, awesome, thank you. And so we did touch on this a little bit earlier, some of you did, but we're going to go ahead and ask you guys to give us the full story about that. So we'd like to know next where you all went to post-secondary. So any degrees that you have received from post-secondary, what those degrees were in. And really, so what made you choose that major? And what made you choose the career that you're in right now? So basically, we'd just like to tell us your story from how you got from undergrad to the position that you are in right now. And so what made you choose to what made you choose the school, the major, and what got you to where you are right now. So we're gonna start back again with Dr. Valley.
Sure. Well, let's see. I am French originally, and both my parents were engineers. So it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that I was going to be an engineer in school. My father was aerospace engineer, and my mother was nuclear engineer. I grew up around airplanes, and so I've always loved airplanes and specifically structures. So when it came time to choose my major, it was going to be aerospace. I went to a French school, which it turned out had a partnership with Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech School of Aerospace Engineering is very highly ranked. I should also say I finished high school in New York City. So I had gotten a taste of America from a young age, and I knew I wanted to go to school in the US at some point. So through the French school that I attended, I landed at Georgia Tech. Originally, I was just going to do a master's in aerospace. And then as these things sort of happen, life just takes you, you have a plan in your mind, and then life just has some other path for you. I met a professor that I really liked, and he convinced me to go get a doctorate degree. And so that's what I did. And that doctorate degree is in mechanical engineering. I'm a structures person. So whether you get a degree in aerospace, in civil, or in mechanical, as far as structures are concerned, there's obviously some differences, but a lot of overlap as well. So it was very easy to do and switch majors that way. After I got my PhD, I started to teach. That's a really long story. I've been through multiple universities, but eventually I landed back at Tech about 15 years ago. Very happy to do so. The current position that I am in, running the Women in Engineering program, was also very much a matter of luck. So those of you who, feel like you're doomed because you don't have an idea of where you want to go and you're not sure what kind of path you want to be on, and you think that you're weird because of that, let me tell you, it's good if you have a plan, but definitely be flexible. And in general, I would say just follow whatever interests you, and chances are you're going to land in a good place. Anyway, so the current position that I am in, it turned out that the previous director of the Women in Engineering program left, and it was very much good place, right place, right time kind of a thing. I had already been involved with women's groups. In general, I'm not sure if you know, there's very few women typically in engineering, so there's definitely a need for more. And I should say there's even fewer African American and just in general racial minorities in engineering. So anyway, yeah, right place, right time, and this is how I basically found my position. So I can't claim that I had a plan when I was 15 years old that I was going to be doing this.
Well, there is a plan, and then there's what is exactly meant to happen. So we like to know that what happens is exactly what was meant to happen. So thank you for sharing that. Ms. O'Donoghue, your post-secondary experiences, what made you choose your major? What made you choose the career that you're in now? Just sort of that whole journey to get you from post-secondary to where you are right now.
All right. So when I was in high school, I thought I would be a doctor. until in the 10th grade, they showed us that video of the lady having a baby. And I saw all that blood and I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That's not going to work out for me at all. So then I started thinking about, well, I like math, I like science, I'm to, but also make a lot of money because I grew up, I had a single mom and we were pretty much working poor. And at the top of my mind, I wanted to escape poverty and just have a good life and have a good career and make a good amount of money. So I knew that being an engineer would do that for sure. You come out probably making the most you make out of most majors with a 4-year degree. So I figured I would probably just get an undergraduate degree. That was my goal because engineering is rigorous, right? And so it took me 5 years at NC State. They told us don't try to rush it, right? So plan on 5 years. So that's what I did. And I was like, well, yeah, that's it. I had a job at Motorola all lined up, but a friend of mine convinced me to get a master's degree. And I was like, well, I don't know about that. And, you know, it's kind of like what Dr. Valley said. He was like, oh, do it, because he was going to Stanford to get a PhD. And I was like, well, that's you. I just want to make some money. It's been a hard 5 years. But I had an opportunity to get a fellowship, which is like a scholarship for graduate school. And I said, okay, if I get this fellowship, I'll go on and get my master's degree because I got my bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. I said, I'll go on and get my bachelor's degree because you just can't pass up free money, right? And so I got the fellowship and I was like, okay. So I went on and I got a master's degree in computer engineering. And so when I finished that, I actually ended up going to work at Motorola. So there was a time when phones did nothing but call people, right? So when I worked at Motorola, they were at the top of the phone game, right? Now they're not anymore because they didn't have the vision to realize that smartphones were going to be a thing, which is, we won't even go there. But anyway, at the time, I didn't even work in the communications. I actually worked in transportation. We made engine controllers. So we made these microcontrollers, which are pretty much like little mini computers that control a lot of the stuff that goes on in your car engines. And I did that for about 8 years. And then I got married and had kids. And when I had kids, I stayed home for about 7 years and took care of my kids. And then I decided to go back when they went to kindergarten. But I didn't really go back to engineering because I was trying to be on their schedule. So I actually taught algebra, geometry. I taught high school math for 2 years. Then my husband got a promotion and we moved to Atlanta. And when I came here, there was an opportunity for me to be an instructor at Chat Tech. And I was extremely happy because I wanted to get back into and I love teaching, and I just felt like I would even enjoy teaching engineering way more than I enjoyed teaching math. And I do. It's great. And the one thing that hopefully you get out of this is when you get an engineering degree, or if you get an engineering degree, you can do lots of things with it. Everyone doesn't always just stay in engineering. My husband's an engineer too, but now he got an MBA. Now he's in the business part of it. So basically, that engineering degree lets employers know that you're analytical, you're a problem solver, you can troubleshoot, and that you would be probably good at a lot of different jobs. So that's my story.
That is a great story. And obviously, as Yoda is telling us, the force has been with you, right? Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for that. Okay, Mr. Barton.
All right. So I decided to attend Georgia Tech, and I was initially admitted into the computer engineering degree program. At the time, it was underneath the School of Electrical Engineering. And in my first week here at Tech, one of the counselors met with me and he said, you know, computer engineering is fine, but if you get a degree in electrical engineering, you can still pursue all of those computer engineering interests, but you will also be of interest to other people who are looking for electrical engineers, but maybe you're not interested in somebody with a computer engineering background. So I would have, in theory, have more different types of jobs being open to you with the electrical engineering degree. And that sounded like a great story to me. So I changed my first week here at Tech to electrical engineering, proceeded through the program, got my bachelor's degree, had done pretty well, still enjoyed the subject. So I decided to stay on and get a master's degree. And at the same time, I got in with the what is it, the co-op program here at Georgia Tech. And so most people associate the co-op program with the undergraduate side of Georgia Tech, but they also have co-ops for the graduate program, and I got involved with them. And I got a job here at Georgia Institute, or GTRI, and that was pretty interesting. And through that job, I got the opportunity to become a full-time employee here at GTRI. And I took that opportunity. And so what ended up happening is GTRI paid for the majority of my master's degree, which was a pretty good deal, in my opinion. And so then I have stayed on at GTRI, lots of interesting things. One of the nice things about the job here at GTRI is that we work on a lot of different projects, so you get exposed to a lot of different areas. Whereas, some people get involved with a product and they deal with that project, 24 or 40 hours a week for years on time. Our projects typically last a year or two, and then you move on to something else, which was immensely frightening when I first started at GTRI. Like, oh gosh, I just got the hang of this last thing, and now I've got to move on to something else. But now I find it, a great source of pleasure in that, you don't get pigeonholed into one thing. And so, with the electrical engineering background, I knew a little bit about electromagnetics and, radio propagation. And here at GTRI, I've been, very deeply involved in all things having to do with radar and radar countermeasures. So it's been a very interesting career, working with lots of people in the DoD and our armed services and that sort of thing. So as Ms. Val said, that, there's no career path. I heard someone describe it as a career wandering one time, and I think that's a pretty apt description. So
Career wandering. I don't think I've heard that term before. I think that's a really good one there. Thank you so much for sharing. Mr. Morris?
Yes, I'd like to start off by saying no dad, single mom. I can start all the way back from elementary school. I failed first grade, and then they put me in learning disability courses my second year, and I just did terrible throughout elementary school. I did terrible throughout middle school, and that's because the environment that I was in. But I kept my head high, and I knew, me working at Chuck E. Cheese, which was I was working at the time. I just knew that I had more to give than just working at Chuck E. Cheese, which was my goal. So all throughout high school, I did terrible. I didn't have a tutor or anything like that. So, something said, well, basically in high school, they kind of helped me graduate, meaning that I was, with D's and C's. I took this extra course to get extra credit. So therefore I passed high school. And then I decided that I want more than life, more to life. So I said to myself, I want to be the first one in my family to graduate from college. And so, I saw the commercials with Harvard, Yale, and even Howard. My grades were terrible, very bad. Some schools never even put me back to say, unfortunately, you didn't meet their criteria. They just they just never replied back. So the only school that took me was Fayetteville State University. And, once I went to school, everything changed because, again, where I'm from, I just didn't have the, the nourishing that I needed, as relates to, going to school. Working at Chuck E. Cheese was fine to my mom's eyes. That's great. You're doing something other than, selling drugs or et cetera. So, but I decided I tried to keep on, going to apply for schools. Fayetteville State was the only school that accepted me. And then, don't you know, once I was in college, my degree at the time was business. And then, it's all about your environment. So when I went to school in college, I excelled. So I changed my major from business to computers because I was very interested in computers in general. I just like the thought that you can plug up something and you can have you can work with a machine that you can, program or have it do what you want to do. So I changed my major to computer science. And then, things changed. First time in my life, I had a 3.2. Thereafter that, I got a 3.8 GPA. And again, it's all about your environment. So in my case, I had teachers and professors, showing me the ropes on how to, do better and push me and mentor me. And that's one thing I didn't have back in the South. They pushed me and showed me how I could be a better person and change my life. So, I just somehow got smart with with the right mentors. I had a 4.2 GPA. Then I got an internship at Nortel Networks, which is in Chapel, used to be Chapel Hill, or what is it? Research Triangle Park. From there, I got a NASA internship. Excuse me. From there, I got NASA scholarship, and that's the first scholarship I ever had. And then I graduated, with a 3.7 GPA in computer science. So then I decided there's they have this, folks, recruiters that come to your job fairs. I didn't really want to know, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I thought about going back to South Carolina, but I knew that was probably a bad idea. So this organization called ETAP, which stands for Entrepreneur Technology Apprenticeship Program, I went to their table and I applied and I got accepted. It's a fellowship at Wheeling Jesuit University in West Virginia. So I excelled in that. And part of the program is once you graduate from the fellowship, a government entity would pick you up as an intern. So we had 14 people that actually got into the program, and various organizations like Homeland Security, NSA, they took the interns that they wanted, and NASA headquarters chose me. So at NASA headquarters, I was a database administrator, and from that point, my internship was going to finish up. So the contractor within my organization wanted me to continue to do database administration since I did a great job. So I wanted to find out how NASA could pay for my schooling. So the idea was I had to go back to school, which I did not want to do, trust me. I went back to school, and as part of me going to school, Greenbelt, if I have to show my paperwork that I've actually, got into to Maryland, to prove that I actually became am a student. NASA Greenbelt picked me up as an intern, and from there, I just went to security, worked in security, IT security for 2 years as I was going to grad school. Of course, the grades are great. As an intern at the time, if you don't have a 3.7 GPA, they'll kick you out of the program. This is talking about 16 years ago now. So years went past, I excelled, and I'm at where I'm at now, which is the first African American in my organization, my division, to be the lead for applications. And what that means is that we we built applications for customers, so like Facebook, anything like that, or applications, that financial applications, we build that. So I manage about 20 plus people to ensure that we build these applications from start to finish. Of course, that comes with requirements, but all I'm trying to say is that, I would never thought I'd be in this position, and just all I want to tell you all on the phone is just keep on dreaming and just don't stop, no matter what your situation is. You can excel. I mean, I'm a prime example. When I come home to South Carolina, they're very impressed and happy. So, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you all today, because everyone doesn't have the best environment or both parents, but you can overcome that if you really want it. And on the side, out of NASA, I like to build software. So, and the funny thing is, now I hire interns, so spring, summer, fall, even pathways interns. So, I like to give back, because if it wasn't for NASA, I mean, and also my mentors in college as well, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And that's all. That's all I have to say.
That is an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing, and kudos to you for the persistence that kept you going as well. And thank goodness, like you said, for the mentors who invested into you also. I just think that if there's at least one person that a student can find on their path that believes in them, can really turn things around for students in their situation. So thank you so much for sharing that. That's an amazing story. Ms. Davis?
Yeah, so I agree. Mentors are so incredibly important. And if you have someone along with you, in different chapters of your life to help you, I'd always wanted to work for NASA when I was younger. Growing up in Minneapolis, there's not a NASA center there. So I didn't have, like some students in Florida or Texas, they get that exposure. So I didn't have that. When I was 13, I watched the movie Apollo 13 with Tom Hanks. And I had always loved design. I thought I wanted to be an architect, didn't know how I'd make that happen. And I'd always loved space. And so watching the movie Apollo 13, I realized what NASA really was, and putting the love of design and the love of space together to form aerospace engineering. So I was like, okay, all right, there's this thing called aerospace engineering. So what do I do? How do I get to NASA? And, going through school, high school, I tried to stick with math and science courses and really put emphasis on that. But I actually ended up falling in love with flying. And so, I took an airplane ride when I was a little kid, and I was like, all right, so maybe I want to be a pilot. And I ended up starting to fly. I'd work after school, a job after school, and then I'd pay for my pilot's license, and I'd fly before school. And just a single engine, Cessna 152. But I made enough to get through my pilot and get my pilot's license senior year of high school. And then I came to realize, okay, I don't think, flying is exactly what I want to do for my career. So let me stick with the aerospace engineering. And I ended up going to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott, Arizona. There's a campus in Florida, in Daytona, and then one in Prescott. And so I went out. Embry-Riddle is very much pilot oriented and engineering oriented. I think they're about half and half right now at the Prescott campus. And I went into aerospace engineering, and I fly for fun. But I don't do much flying anymore. It's pretty expensive. But it was a fun hobby, and I really developed the engineering. And I had, again, like Justin was mentioning the mentoring. That was key, because I don't think I would be here today if it wasn't for those key people that believed in me. And I know, Christine had mentioned the lack of women that we have in aerospace engineering. And I know Stephanie can attest to that, with engineering in general. So it was really good to have that mentoring support, because sometimes, you question yourself and your abilities, especially when you're younger. And I stuck through it, worked my rear off, and I ended up going to get my master's. And it was actually a mentor of mine at Embry-Riddle that said, you know what, why don't you go on to get your master's? And here's a master's program at NASA Langley Research Center, which is in Hampton, Virginia. And there was a consortium of schools, one of which was Georgia Tech, and one of which was UVA and University of Maryland and Virginia Tech. I got my master's in mechanical and aerospace engineering from UVA, and I was able to do my research at NASA Langley. Well, that kind of, it's kind of like these doors in your career, and it starts in high school too, that opens a little bit, and it opens up this other door, and then that opportunity opens up this other door. And so it's sort of this chain reaction that you don't plan. Well, I ended up getting a full-time job at NASA Langley, and was able to work on amazing missions. The Mars Curiosity rover, which is a rover we landed in 2012 on the surface of Mars. I worked that, focusing on entry, descent, and landing, and we can talk about that sometime. But it was flight mechanics simulation, so in the computing world, and I became obsessed with it, and I loved it. After that, I realized, you know what, I love the simulation world, but I want hands-on work, and I had yet another opportunity, mentorship, to get access to NASA Goddard. And I ended up working on a telescope called James Webb Space Telescope, on flight hardware for that telescope, in the clean room in a bunny suit. And so that opened up that door. And then I ended up getting into systems engineering after that. And so along the way, now I'm working on the Roman Space Telescope I mentioned earlier at the observatory level, which is, the telescope and instruments all together, launching out into deep space. And so you kind of just, you take little steps at a time. But if I was to look back when I was 13, I didn't think I would ever be here where I am today, like talking to you guys. But you have goals in mind, and you just try to work through it, even though sometimes you question yourself and it's hard. So.
That was really another really great story. Just listening to you talk about landing in outer space, and flight patterns and all that really cool stuff. It kind of makes you ask, do I have time to change my career? This is very exciting stuff. Thank you so much for sharing. Really great stories, everyone. So if you guys could let us know, well, actually, before we move on, I'm going to take just a bit of a pause to just, again, remind all of our students, please make sure you're signing in chat, your school, your district, all that information as well. And then I just want to check in with any of the students or staff or anyone on the call to see if you have any questions so far for our panelists. They're sharing just such awesome information, and I want to make sure that we pause for a minute for any questions from the group. All right, well, if you have some, please make sure you raise your hand so that we can get them in, because this is a really awesome opportunity to be able to talk to people with this amount of experience and background in this area. So if you have any interest at all in engineering, this is a very good time to ask a question. Okay, so Mr. Hey, Maxwell.
I have a question.
Okay.
Hello, a wonderful panelists. Thank y'all for joining us on this terrific Tuesday. Question, what would you say was the hardest subject you had to take in your educational career? What was the hardest subject you had to take in your educational career leading up to being an engineer?
I'll start with that, and the two mechanical engineers probably might not feel the same, but statics and mechanics was the hardest for me. And I was kind of annoyed because I'm an electrical and computer engineer, so I don't even have to take these classes anyway. But I mean, they were really hard for me. And actually, the first time I took them at NC State, what they did is they put both of them into one class. And I think I shouldn't have done that. I think I should have just taken two classes and just been done with it, because the first time I took them, I actually ended up dropping the class. And I was just like, oh my God. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna take it again. And I took it again, and I still didn't do great, but it was the last semester of my college career. And so it didn't really matter that much. But one of the things that I will say, and you'll probably continue to hear this in everyone's story, is that persistence. You have to persist. You will not be great at everything. And I think one of the myths of engineering is that you just have to be like a brainiac and be great at math and science. It's not true. You just have to work hard. You just have to put in the work, even when you are not necessarily getting the results that you wish that you were getting. So for me, it was statics and mechanics.
Stephanie, I'll add to that. It's so funny that you say that because statics was my worst too. It was so frustrating. I got a C and I was thankful for that. But it was just like, you know, you get that, you get so frustrated and you have to, you know, dust yourself off, pick yourself up and say, okay, all right, I'm gonna keep doing this, keep trying again. But that, I agree. And I love mechanical engineering, got a master's in it, but statics was the worst.
So I have to pitch in. I teach statics.
Guys.
I just want to set the record straight for those of you that are hearing this and getting scared. It's really not a bad class. I'm kidding. I think so. It's if you don't know, statics is the study of objects that are in equilibrium, so not moving, but that are still supporting forces. So if you think of a bridge, for example, typical statics kind of system. And what's hard is it's very much like physics, the same kind of, you know, physics that you might take in high school. But what's hard is it's just it's at a different level and there's additional concepts and things like that. So certainly I can attest a lot of the students that I see in my classes, it's like some of them get it right away. Some of them, they get it the day of the final. It's just kind of, it's almost like there's a shift in mindset that has to occur and it can be really hard. But for me, it's a fun class. My worst class by far was thermodynamics, which is the study of energy, basically power. If you've heard of the first law, second law of thermodynamics, just not my cup of tea at all. And like everyone has been saying, you just gotta persist, don't give up. And one thing I would add is there's a tendency to think, especially if you're at a really good school, that everyone around you gets it, that you're the only one who's struggling, particularly if you're from an underrepresented group, a woman or a minority. You'll be surrounded mostly by white men, and nothing against white men. Most of them are absolutely wonderful. But it's even harder when you don't sort of fit the mold to think that you really belong. And then you struggle in your coursework, and that just seems to compound the problem. I just want to say everyone struggles, but a lot of people will not share that. So just trust in yourself and just keep doing the work. And go talk to your professors, because they'll be helpful, most of them.
Yeah, so I would say, in undergrad, I took graduate linear algebra, which was, to me it was hard, but I got through it. But that's not the worst or the hardest courses I've taken or course that I've taken. It's actually every computer science course that I've taken, C++, Java. You have to understand, when you go to school, especially for computer science, you really don't have a life. You try to mix up, try to have a life in computer science, you will fail. So programs are due by 12 o'clock. And if you don't have it done by 12 o'clock, that's 20 points off right there. So, and that's not including syntax errors. If your if else statements are incorrect, that's another 10 points. So I actually cried quite a bit. I even told my mom, I think I want to quit, because this is no life, crying and for courses. but I stuck with it. It was hard, but I mean, life is hard, so you just got to do it. You know, persistence. As a lot of the folks here are saying, you just have to do it. You have to sit down and you know, shut your friends out and just concentrate and study. That was the only way I could graduate from school, from college, with a computer science degree. So yeah, computer science courses. I mean, to me, all of them were hard to you know, it was just hard. You know, I actually had to drop maybe one or two courses because I tried to party and do the same and do undergrad or to do computer projects or computer science homework, and you can't mix them. So yeah, I would say computer science courses.
I would say the class that I found the most difficult was Kalman filtering, which is a lot of matrix math and just ugly stuff like that, but that's not particularly interesting. The second hardest class I ever had is I actually took some business classes during my career, and the second hardest class I ever took was federal income tax accounting, because there is no rhyme or reason other than somebody lobbied, a congressman to get some sort of tax break put into the code right there. And wow, it was just an incredible amount of memorization. There was not a logical flow to it. And so I worked really hard on that class, even though most people probably you say, oh, it's outside of engineering. It couldn't have been that hard. It was very hard. So
That is interesting. I love to see people jump out there and maybe take something that's completely different from their path to give them a perspective and a different experience as well. So great information. Thank you guys so much for sharing. So we have a question from one of our students, Kiana Clark. And Kiana wants to know, what's the interview process like for engineers, and how much coding are engineers expected to know? So anyone can answer this.
I would say you're probably, or at least in my field, in the electrical engineering field, you're expected to know some amount of coding. If you can pick up Python along the way, I think that would be a great start, because lots of people are doing things in Python. The interview process, we want to know what sort of projects you've worked on. I like to know, okay, where in that project did something go wrong, and then how did you react, and how did you go about trying to correct that? Because we all know about Murphy's Law, and something's going to go wrong at some point. And so how do you, prepare for that going wrong, and then how do you react once that happens? So that's about it.
I would say it depends on your field of engineering, how much programming is going to be required. I'm electrical as well as computer. And so basically, when you're in computer engineering, you probably need to know a little bit more programming than you probably would need to know in electrical, because a lot of times you'll be working with microcontrollers, like I was talking about before, which is you'll be working to make things smart. And to make things smart, you have to write programs to program those things so that the hardware can be smart. And so I know for when I was in college, I probably took about one programming class. And in my program, we take about two. We take two classes for an associate's degree. So it just depends. But what'll happen, which happens a lot in engineering in general. So engineering pretty much prepares you with the basics, right? It gives you the basic foundational information that you need to solve different types of applications. But what you do depends on the company that you go to and how you are going to apply that science and math. Because that's what engineering, the difference between a scientist and an engineer is that scientists, they just want to learn about science just to know about it and increase their knowledge, but engineers apply it to some sort of a product, a process, or something like that. So it just depends on what you end up doing with your engineering degree. For example, when I went to go work at Motorola, I was in this program the first year called the Engineering Rotational Program. They hired 10 engineers, all of them, well, I would say about half of them electrical and computer and half of them computer engineering. But all the electrical and computer engineers, we did different things. We did totally different things depending on where we went within the company. So that's when you'll really know how much is needed, and you'll have to learn it, because now what you have to understand is the world we live in now, you'll be continuously learning. You won't just learn something and then that knowledge carry you for 20 years like it may have in the past. I'm learning stuff like over Christmas, I'll be learning some stuff. I'll be taking some workshops and stuff like that. So knowing one language will help you to easily pick up another language. So that's the good thing. Once you learn one language, you'll be able to easily pick up other languages, and then you'll be able to apply that to whatever application that you're using it for.
Great advice. Anyone want to add anything else to that?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I do hire interns. So what we look for in candidates, we look for folks that have a lot of open source programming skills like PHP, Perl. Someone mentioned Perl, but with these open source tools with budget constraints, as far as like .NET is very costly. So we in my organization, we look for candidates who have more of a open source background for what we do. Other organizations do different things, but if you have that skill set, you would be better. You can better yourself or position yourself in an environment that mostly does open source programming. Not necessarily, well, I was going to say you don't necessarily have to have the math skills, but you do have to have the logic in order to develop in open source or even any programming skill. But the open source stuff, that's most definitely not going to go anywhere because it's free. Support is costly, but as far as developing these languages, it's a no cost to the agency or no cost to the organization. So I would advise folks to pick up PHP specifically, WordPress and Drupal, which is a CMS, content management system. We use a lot of that within our environment to stand up sites. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Don, you're muted. We can't hear you.
So sorry. Thank you. So I think what I drew from that is, being a lifelong learner is key, that you need to make sure that you are open to continuously learning new things and developing new skills and adapting to new environments. I heard a mentor tell me very early on is that, your dream job, it hasn't even been developed yet in some cases. So you need to continue to prepare yourself and be willing to learn and grow and adapt to new environments. So this is lots of great advice, you guys. Thank you so much. So I have another question, and I'm not sure if this is a student or not. This is from Irene Doyle. Irene wants to know, and this will probably be our last question, so I'll give everybody a chance to answer this. If you could name one thing that is the best part of your job, and then one thing that's maybe not the best part of your job as it relates to what you typically do on a daily basis. So I'll start around the horn again with Dr. Valley.
Sure. So I just want to start by saying I really don't have a typical common engineer job. I have engineering degrees, but I work as an academic, as a professor. So I'm going to answer the question, but I just want to make sure you understand. If you work for a typical engineering firm, the answer would be very different. A favorite part of my job is definitely dealing with the students. It's a cliche, but those of us that are in academia, I think it's fair to say we're in it because of the kids, the students, I should say. They're really special. I get to work with really, really gifted young people. They're very high energy. They want to change the world. They're just interesting. We're all nerds, so we're very comfortable with one another. It's a really great environment. And it keeps you young, quite frankly, which is wonderful. The worst part of my job is very definitely fundraising. Almost everything that I do every day is paid for by corporate sponsors. Actually, not government entities like NASA, although we do work with NASA, but a company like, for example, Boeing or Kimberly-Clark or Ford. Those companies donate money to our program. That's what supports the outreach when we run like summer camps for young girls. It also supports scholarships for our students. And it's definitely a skill, asking people for money. Even though the mission is wonderful, it's still very much, it's hard to do. And it's not at all what I thought I would do when I was taking statics and other classes as an engineer.
Thank you. Thank you. Ms. O'Donoghue?
Well, so I'm an instructor as well. And so the best part of my job is when I am teaching my students and that light bulb goes off and they just get something when before they were just looking at me like a deer caught in headlights and it snaps. And I'm like, yay, they get it. It's really like partnering with people to help them reach their educational goals. It's great. And it's really great when I'm dealing with people who are like me, who are overcoming poverty, and I see them changing their lives in 2 short years, because for an associate's degree, that's 2 years. And I can see people go from being in poverty to making $50,000-$60,000 a year. And that's a lot, when you are growing up in poverty. So that's the great part. The part I don't like as much is grading. Grading takes so much time, and as an instructor, you grade because feedback is important for students to understand if they're getting the information, how they're doing, and stuff like that. And so I take it seriously, but it takes a lot of time, and it's not my favorite thing. Now, when I was practicing as an engineer, I would say that the favorite thing about my job was solving a problem. And that's probably why most people get into engineering. It's just like figuring something out. You can't figure it out. You don't know what it is, or it hasn't been designed yet. And you have to design something and create something and make it work. And when you do, we would call that like tape out when we finished the chip. It was so exciting because you created something. So a lot of people don't consider engineering like a creative job, but really it is. It's very creative. And so that was my favorite part when I was working as an engineer.
Thank you so much for that. Mr. Barton?
I think the best part is there, as Ms. O'Donoghue said, that there's a number of small successes that one can enjoy every day, right? Getting a piece of code to work, for some reason I can never get it right the first time, but sometime, after a little bit, I can figure out where I screwed up and get it working. So that's nice. Or getting a piece of hardware to work. Or as of right now, my group is supporting some tests down at the Warner Robins Air Force Base right now. And so all the prep to put in and get the equipment working for that, and to see it actually work is very satisfying. And there's a lot of little things on a daily or weekly basis, and those sort of things keep you going. The worst part, probably like any job, for those of you who have seen Office Space, there are TPS reports type of stuff that you have to do in just about any job. We've got to keep timesheets here at my job and document what we've worked on and how long we've worked on it. And I get like 5 emails a day or on the end of the month when it's time to finish and turn in your timesheet, right? I really only need 1, but I get 5. So, that sort of thing is annoying after a while. So that'd be my answer.
Thank you so much. I think the movie Office Space, there was for those of you who've seen it, there's a lot of complaining around those TPS reports that the lead actor had to do all the time. So I can relate on that level. Mr. Morris?
Yeah, so I would say from a customer standpoint, launching a customer's application or website on time, meeting that SLA, service level agreement, for those who don't know, service level agreement, but also the schedule, meeting that schedule. There's no scope creep or anything like that. I would say, and also, the customer being thankful and, just so happy to have this awesome application that my team built. On the other side, if we don't build the application on time, or if we don't launch on a designated date, that's the worst part, because sometimes, you have to talk to the customer and say, we apologize, and, we'll do something for them as far as, maybe service or something that we can offer, or something back, because I like to make all my customers happy. That's most important for me. So that's my 2.
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
So I'd say I enjoy the personal successes, kind of getting cool things done that you're working on yourself. But when it comes to these missions that I've had a chance to work on, and the Roman Space Telescope that we're working on now, it's the contribution of those efforts with the greater team. So working with your team, and it can be on anything from space telescopes to a component, in some electronic subsystem of some other thing. It's such a wide scale, but it's so cool when you're working on your thing, working with your team, and you're successful, and you see that rocket launch, you see that Mars rover land, and it's amazing to share that with the team, and it just builds that stronger working relationship, and it makes you realize that you can't land a Mars rover by yourself. In engineering, you can't do everything by yourself. And so I would say that actually leads to the worst part of the job. And when you work with a team, what happens sometimes? Miscommunication, right? I mean, we're all human. So when miscommunications happen, because they do, it usually results in a failure. And for us, it could be a failure on orbit if you don't catch it. It could be, a failure of a Mars rover or something like that. So the magnitude can be great. And so how do you prevent those miscommunications? And I think that's one of the biggest things. You're continually trying to be a better communicator, even though sometimes in school they don't necessarily tell you, how to work with a team. But you'll probably get that in school if you go to some universities. You'll have to work in teams, and that's such a huge part of engineering, being able to communicate with folks. And it's much more fun, I think, to have those successes with your team surrounding you than just on your own. But miscommunication happens, so got to work it.
Wonderful, wonderful. The one question we didn't necessarily have time for, I think you guys already answered it, because we usually try to ask you what soft skills that you all think are very important to be successful. But I heard themes just throughout the conversation about teamwork, being able to work with other people. I heard the good communication skills as being very important. Also persistence, fortitude to push forward even through obstacles. And then also asking for help when you need it, and that's a strength and not a weakness, because everybody needs help at some point. I just also want to stress to all of our Gear Up students on the call that if you're having a difficulty in any of your math or computer science or science courses or anything, you do have a free tutor.com account. It's 24/7 on demand, 365, I think, except for Christmas and Thanksgiving. Those are the only days that they're not offering tutoring. So it is available for you. It's one of those instances where you don't have to pay another dime for it. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask for help from your Gear Up coordinator, from your teacher, your counselor. It's the smart thing to do. Absolutely. I want to thank all of our panelists, Ms. Davis, Mr. Morris, Dr. Valley, Mr. Barton, Ms. O'Donoghue. You all have shared so much incredibly valuable information. I think that these students will really, really value this for a very long time. And I heard someone say, even if folks don't even know that their lights are coming on, they're coming on when they hear such really outstanding information, because they will need it again later at some point. I know you all could have been doing anything with your evening, but you sacrificed your time to invest in our students, and we are eternally grateful to each and every one of you for that. So let's please give a raised hand for all of our speakers. Thank you in the chat box, if you will, please. Just let them know how much we appreciate them being here with us this evening. They did an absolutely amazing job. I want to congratulate our door prize winner, our student, Ms. Jacqueline Shai Huerta from Spencer High School in Muskogee County. Jacqueline, are you still with us this evening? And if you are, please come off of mute so that we can hear your lovely voice, Jacqueline. I see that you're still here, but I don't hear you. Hopefully you're just having some problems coming off of mute, Jacqueline. So what we need you to do is type in, send your information to us at gearupgeorgia@usg.edu, and you will win a Gear Up book bag full of supplies, to include a TI-84 calculator that will hopefully help you with your ACT, SAT upcoming tests, and any of your STEM courses as well. So hopefully you will get that very soon. Make sure you send us that email at gearupgeorgia@usg.edu. Also, I want to give a special thank you to Ms. O'Donoghue, because we are doing a hands-on workshop with our students who are interested in computer engineering on February the 25th at 6 p.m. We will be sending out registration information to the students. We'll actually be sending you a little kit that you can be working on virtually with Ms. O'Donoghue during the class. There's very limited space. So when we get ready to send this out, if you're interested, you can register, and it's one of our first time doing something like this. The one thing that COVID-19 has provided is opportunities to do things differently. And so we are taking advantage of that every way that we can. Again, so thank you all so much for being here. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great evening. Thank you all for coming.
Hey, Dawn.
Yes.
Before you close this out, I have some students in here. Can I say something to them real quickly?
Sure.
Okay. UB students, if you are here, thank y'all for being here tonight. I hope y'all learned a lot. If you're coming over to Hamilton, just I've got your name down, so you can come over to Hamilton. I'll let you in the room.
All right. Have a great evening, everyone. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Justin.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, I wanted to know if I could get some of your contact information, because my son is doing computer science, and you said that you do internships, and I told him